It starts small. Your friend recently got a cyber eye augmentation and raves about how much easier his life is with it. You've heard a lot about it and have done your research. The healing process may be a little bit painful, but it's worth it. While they're in there, might as well add on some options to enhance image and get a micro video. Never know when you'll need to record something. The feeling is exhilarating. Did that sign always look so bright? Your cyber eye fits in nicely, but over time, it becomes your new normal, and the initial excitement wears off. You do recall running into someone with a cyber arm the other day. I mean, you heard grapple hands can be quite a bit of fun. You feel strong and powerful. Before you know it, you're asking someone to cut your throat open to install a cyber snake, and while they're there, might as well get gills. Life has become exciting. I mean, not to mention the crimes you're committing to get enough Eurobucks for your new toys. What else can you upgrade? By this point, you're more machine than man. Ah, but you're out of Eurobucks again. What will you do this time to get that next augmentation? Cyberware is one of the main aspects of the tabletop role-playing game Cyberpunk Red. I'm going to talk through what cyberware and cyberpsychosis is, and how it mechanically works in the game. I'm also going to talk through some of my top tips of how to roleplay someone who's descending into the path of cyberpsychosis. The definition of cyberware is pretty basic. It's essentially anything that you're implanting into your body to either replace or enhance what's already there. Sometimes you get cyberware for medical reasons. So let's say you had an injury and you lose a couple fingers. You can get those replaced through augmentation and going to various different either malls or hospitals or clinics to get that implanted into your hand. But sometimes people willingly choose to cut off or remove a functioning part of their body for the sake of enhancement. And when this decision is made, it's an active choice by that player. They are going to start going down the path of cyberpsychosis. Generally, cyberpsychosis is a slow path. It's not immediate. But how it works is as you get more cyberware or sometimes traumatic events happen to you that will also affect this score, your body becomes more machine than man. When this happens, you start to get certain symptoms that show up that eventually leads to cyberpsychosis. Now, the official definition in the book is as follows. Cyberpsychosis is a dissociative disorder which occurs when someone with pre-existing psychopathic tendencies enhances themselves via cybernetics to the point they no longer see themselves or others as complete, sapient organisms, but simply as a collection of replaceable parts. So as you can probably guess, cyberpsychosis can be pretty dangerous. If someone starts to feel like they're more of a machine than a human being, they might take actions that they normally wouldn't take because they're losing their empathy. Okay, so let's get into how this mechanically works for the Cyberpunk Red role-playing game. And for this, I'm gonna go through a specific example. So right on the screen, I have an example character. This actually comes from a single shot pack that Cyberpunk Red has on their website where you can get for free, so I will link that in the description below. I've chosen a specific character here. This is named Red Eye, who's a netrunner, and empathy is currently a 4 out of 6. So to give a little bit of an explanation, right when you would make your character, your empathy would start out at a 6 out of 6. And your humanity is equal to 10 times your empathy. So if this empathy was at 6, the starting humanity would be at 60. But looking at this character, she already has some cyberware on her. So I'm going to scroll down to the bottom here. There's a cyberware section. It looks like she has a neural link, which this is basically something that you would need to get as a prerequisite to get other things that would deal with the nervous system. So this is a wired nervous system and has 5 option slots. So you'll pick different things that you can put within those slots. She also has interface plugs and shift tacks. So whenever she bought these things, and in addition to any potential traumatic events that would reduce her humanity, she would have taken that loss in the humanity section, which would in turn reduce her empathy. Every time the tens unit changes, your empathy changes as well. So when she went from 60 to 59, she would have been at 5 out of 6 empathy. And then whenever she went from 50 to 49, she jumped down to a 4 out of 6. Now let's say we want some more cyberware. I'm going to go to the core rulebook, jump over. This is page 358, which has a complete list of all the cyberware. And I would do a little bit of perusing the different options to see what I'm interested in. I know she already has a neural link, which has 5 slots, so I probably kind of check out what I'm interested in here. All right, so the chemical analyzer looks pretty cool. It looks like she would be able to automatically test substances and be able to identify them. But you'll see here the prerequisite is a chipware socket, which we don't have. So I'm going to go back up to the top here and see, okay, chipware socket. This can be installed at a clinic, and it's a neural wear option. It does not take up a slot for our neural link, which is great, but it does require it. So I'm going to go ahead and purchase this. It's 500 euro bucks. And then you'll see the humanity loss here. It's either a 7 or 2d6. Upon initial character creation, you would just take the static number, the 7. Post character creation, when you're actually playing the game and involved in scenarios or campaigns, you would then roll the dice. So for simplicity's sake, this character, she's already in the game, she's playing things, and she would roll 2d6. Let's assume she gets 10. Okay, so we installed our chipware socket and we would have a humanity loss of 10. So let's jump back to her character sheet. 46 minus 10 is 36. Since we reached that new threshold, the empathy would go down to a 3 out of 6. All right, so we have our prerequisite, so we can go down here to the chemical analyzer. It's another 500 euro bucks, and then the humanity loss is 1d6. So let's say she got a 4. We'll go over back to her character sheet. We took the original 10, so we were at 36. Minus 4 is 32 out of 60. Since we did not change that tens digit, our empathy would remain at 3 out of 6. Now you would continue on this path, taking humanity loss every time that you bought cyberware or had a traumatic event. Once your humanity is less than 0, your empathy would also be at 0 and you have reached cyberpsychosis. Great, now we know what cyberware and cyberpsychosis is and how it mechanically works in the game. So next I want to talk through some of my top tips of how to roleplay, whether you're a player character or a GM who's playing an NPC that's going down this path of cyberpsychosis. What are my top tips to roleplay this scenario? The first thing I recommend doing is going to page 232 in the core rulebook. This actually clearly lists out several symptoms that you will exhibit when you're going down this path of cyberpsychosis. Looking at the list of symptoms, you can start to brainstorm how this would fit with your character and what tendencies they would have. And they're also pretty clear about, as your empathy is going down, how many of these traits you should be portraying. So when you have 2 empathy left, they say to start portraying these traits. Sometimes you would maybe sprinkle it in, you might have an episode or 2 here and there, but it's not super obvious yet. When you get to empathy 1, you are more clearly displaying 3 of these traits. Empathy 0, and you would be displaying 5 of these traits. But at this point, you would also have a humanity of 0 or above. When it gets to 0 and you have negative humanity, that's at the point where your character is in full cyberpsychosis and the character is out of the game at that point because you're just pretty much crazy and you have to hand over your player character to the GM. Now, a special tip for the GMs, it's kind of cool to keep the character sheets of characters who have gone full cyberpsycho, because you can maybe bring them back in another one-shot or another part of the campaign later where your player characters would have to take care of that cyberpsycho, and it's pretty fun for them to show up again. Now, whenever you get to empathy 0 as a player character, you'll probably want to watch out, because at this point, a psycho squad is probably watching you. Psycho squads are essentially SWAT teams that are specifically trained to take care of cyberpsychos. Oftentimes, cyberpsychos can become quite violent, and even if they're not super violent, they're very strong and powerful because they have all these augmentations and they can pretty much wreak havoc, whether it's stealing something or being very rude because they don't have any empathy towards people. But oftentimes it's the violence that really gets to the point where these psycho squads are having to be called in. So let's walk through some of those symptoms and how I'd recommend role-playing them within the game. The first one here is grandiose sense of self. Now, you have to be a little bit careful with this because some players may read this as, okay, I could be a selfish role player. But that's not the case. You still have to be very considerate of the other players at the table. Make sure that they're getting an equal contribution to combat or investigation or doing those things. However, when you're role-playing and interacting with NPCs, that's the point in which you can be selfish or maybe put your needs above other players. So let's say you're at a bar looking for information. The waitress doesn't know much, so it's not a great lead, but you do notice that she has a very beautiful bracelet on. You, selfishly, would be very interested in getting that bracelet to either sell it for more Eurobucks so you can get more augmentations or whatever the case might be. So you might take an opportunity to step away from the table and roleplay out trying to get that bracelet. That is not necessarily being selfish at the table, but just role-playing and putting a little bit more thought into how you can be selfish within the context of the game. The next one here is need for stimulation. This one I think is pretty easy. How I like to roleplay it is basically getting distracted by things. So if there's a concert you can hear a couple blocks down, you would be liable to be distracted by that and change course to go and do that instead of whatever task that you're working on for the team. Now again, you have to be a little bit careful here to make sure you don't go completely off the rails and take all your time doing your side stuff. But from time to time, it's interesting to get distracted. And it doesn't even have to be going completely off trail. It could just be a very beautiful looking outside of the club with a really shiny sign. And you look over and you want to talk to someone really quick and then you get back on track. The next couple are pretty intuitive, but it's basically being cunning and manipulative or having a lack of remorse and guilt. These things are essentially like, okay, now you can maybe kill a gang member and not feel anything. It's just something that is in the way of your path, so you're just going to go and do it. Essentially, it's having more opportunities to take advantage of specifically NPCs. Again, this does not mean that you're going to go and be manipulative towards the other players at your table because it can get not fun in those situations. But interacting with the world around you and NPCs is fair game. They also mention poor behavioral controls and impulsiveness. And this one is pretty easy as well. I feel like it's just more of go with the flow, whatever seems exciting to your character is what you want to latch on to. And you don't think through decisions either. So if there's a roadblock in front of you and you're not sure where to go, normally you might think through different options. But in this case, you don't really think about the consequences. You just go and do, especially if you have a bunch of augmentations that allows you to be more powerful than other people or to go through something a lot quicker. Then you're able to use that cyberware and cyberpsychosis to think that you're invulnerable and think that you can go and do whatever you want or go to a very simple solution. Don't bother with anything else. We're just going to impulsively do something and go with it. Also on the list is a failure to accept responsibility. This one's pretty easy. You just think nothing's your fault. And then the last one I want to talk about is criminal versatility. So basically, when you are in cyberpsychosis, again, you're not thinking about consequences. You just do whatever is beneficial to you. This could lead to being more violent, or in some cases, maybe thieving more, doing things that you normally wouldn't do because you're not thinking about the consequences. What I like to include here is a lot of times these crimes are a result of trying to get more Eurobucks, because cyberware is pretty expensive. And so if you're constantly getting augmentation, you're going to be pretty poor. You're going to want to try and get more Eurobucks whenever you can so you can go and get your next cyberware upgrade. It almost creates a sense of desperation, always trying to get money to go and do something, in this case, getting that next piece of cyberware. So that is the gist of cyberware and cyberpsychosis. I hope this cleared up any questions that you had about it. This aspect of the game is certainly one of my favorites, and I hope that you have fun playing your characters deep into the cyberpsychosis hole. If you have any other questions about cyberware or cyberpsychosis, make sure you ask me in the comments below. If you like this video and like Cyberpunk Red content, make sure you like the videos so that I know to make more. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.